They knew Hitler's routine better than his generals. They shared meals in the Führer bunker, typed his most secret orders, and sat just steps from the center of Nazi power. After the war, they vanished into ordinary life. No trials, no punishment. This is the story of Hitler's secretaries and the judgment they somehow escaped. 4 ordinary women held extraordinary power in Nazi Germany. Traudl Junge started as a failed ballerina from Munich who dreamed of dancing but ended up becoming Hitler's youngest private secretary at just 22 years old in December 1942. Most significantly, she would draft Hitler's will and testament in April 1945. Christa Schroeder worked as Hitler's stenotypist from June 1933 until January 1945, before evacuation. Gerda Christian left her job at Elizabeth Arden Cosmetics in 1937 to join the overworked secretarial staff. Johanna Wolf served Hitler from 1929 to April 1945 as his chief secretary. At the Wolfschatz, Hitler's Eastern Front military headquarters, Junge and Christian ate lunch with him daily from 1941 until November 1944. The Berghof in Berchtesgaden became their second home, where they witnessed his personal moments. When Hitler moved to the Führer bunker in Berlin in January 1945, Schroeder and the others followed him into the underground complex, where Schroeder joined the bunker lunches until late April 1945. The personal relationships these women formed revealed the human side of history's darkest regime. Traudl Junge married SS officer Hans Hermann Junge in June 1943, though he died in August 1944. Gerda married Luftwaffe Major Eckhard Christian in February 1943. Johanna Wolf remained single and devoted herself entirely to Hitler, who called her Wolfen because of her fierce loyalty. Junge later described Hitler as a pleasant boss and a fatherly friend during her time with him. She admitted, "I was fascinated by Adolf Hitler. I deliberately ignored all the warning voices inside me," per her memoirs. This reveals how she chose to remain in his inner circle despite potential misgivings. She enjoyed her time by his side almost until the bitter end, showing how proximity to power can cloud moral judgment. Wolf's dedication went beyond professional duty. She was widely regarded as the most authoritative source for information about Hitler and remained a dedicated Nazi throughout her life. Her long tenure and close relationship with Hitler made her a key figure within the regime. Unlike the other secretaries, Wolf declined memoir offers even in the 1970s, taking many secrets to her grave. During Hitler's final days in the Führer bunker, these women continued their daily routines. When Hitler offered them a chance to fly to safety on April 20, 1945, Schroeder and Wolf were flown out, while Junge and Christian volunteered to remain. Their access to Hitler's private thoughts and directives gave them unique insights into the inner workings of the Nazi regime. This intimate access made them invaluable witnesses to events that generals never saw. Yet their testimonies would later raise questions about willful ignorance versus genuine naivety. As the Third Reich crumbled around them, these women faced a choice that would determine their fate. The Führer bunker had become a concrete tomb beneath Berlin. By late April, the Red Army was within 2 blocks of the bunker, and Hitler's secretaries could hear Soviet forces advancing through the city streets, getting closer each day. After Hitler's death on April 30, 1945, the bunker descended into chaos. Hitler had personally handed each secretary a cyanide ampule, giving Christian hers on April 30th with instructions for use if capture seemed inevitable. Junge and Christian faced a critical decision: surrender to the Soviets or attempt a breakout through the burning city. On May 1, 1945, Waffen-SS General Wilhelm Mohnke organized the escape group. The secretaries joined Hitler's personal pilot Hans Bohr, bodyguard chief Hans Rottenhuber, Martin Bormann's secretary Elsa Kruger, and other bunker survivors in the desperate plan. Their objective was to reach Allied lines and avoid Soviet capture, but the mission required crossing a city completely controlled by enemy forces. The escape route through Berlin tested every survivor's will to live. The group moved through bombed-out streets filled with rubble and debris from weeks of artillery bombardment. Soviet patrols controlled most intersections, forcing the escapees to take dangerous detours through demolished buildings. The secretaries, who had spent months in the protected bunker environment, now crawled through ruins and hid in basements to avoid detection. The group split up as they crossed the ruined city, with some captured or killed amid the chaos. The secretaries moved from one hiding place to the next, navigating streets still echoing with last-ditch battles. On May 2, 1945, the escape attempt reached its end. The group, including WW2, Gerda Christian, and Elsa Kruger, sought refuge in a beer cellar on Schönhauser Allee. They hoped the underground location would provide safety from Soviet patrols sweeping the area. However, Soviet SMERSH agents discovered their hiding place and captured the entire group. The capture transformed Hitler's former Nazi secretaries into prisoners of war. They faced an uncertain future in Soviet hands, not knowing what methods their captors would use to extract the secrets they possessed. The interrogation rooms became theaters where truth, survival, and loyalty collided in complex ways. Each Allied power approached questioning Nazi prisoners with different methods and objectives, creating vastly different experiences for Hitler's secretaries depending on which force captured them. WW2 was arrested on July 9, 1945 by the Soviet administration and later held by Americans until mid-1946. The Soviets held her in jail, where she heard disturbing accounts from her guards about German military atrocities against Soviet families. These experiences exposed her to the reality of the war beyond the Nazi propaganda she had accepted while working for Hitler. Her post-interrogation realization about Nazi atrocities in the East came through these harrowing Soviet guard accounts. Christa Schroeder was arrested on May 28, 1945, and released on May 12, 1948. She was interrogated by Albert Zoller of the 7th U.S. Army, serving as a French liaison officer. Zoller cultivated a personal relationship with Schroeder to gain her trust and extract information about Hitler's private life. This strategy proved effective, as investigators used Schroeder's 1948 testimony as the basis for the 1949 book Hitler Privat, an early source on Hitler's private behavior. Johanna Wolf presented interrogators with their greatest challenge. American troops arrested her on May 23, 1945, in Bad Tölz, and held her as a prisoner until January 14, 1948. Despite her long service as Hitler's chief secretary, Wolf refused to provide any information or interviews about Hitler. She maintained her loyalty to Hitler even after his death and rejected substantial offers for her memoirs. Her unwavering commitment to protecting Hitler's image frustrated investigators who needed her testimony to understand the regime's final days. Elsa Kruger faced British interrogation after the war. She had been present in the Führer bunker during the final days and witnessed Eva Braun receiving cyanide capsules from Hitler. In an unexpected twist, Kruger later married her British interrogator Leslie James in December 1947, showing how personal relationships could develop even in these tense circumstances. The secretary's testimonies contained contradictions and inconsistencies that raised more questions than they answered about Hitler's final days and their knowledge of atrocities. Wolf claimed that Hitler was unaware of the terrible things happening during his reign, and that fanatics exerted more and more influence, giving orders Hitler knew nothing about. The interrogations became a battle between official narratives and personal survival. The women's testimonies revealed the complex psychology of complicity and the human capacity for self-deception in extreme circumstances. Their varying accounts and claims of ignorance complicated the process of historical reconstruction, making it difficult to determine the full extent of their knowledge and involvement in the regime's crimes. For these women, interrogation marked only the beginning of a long journey back into a world that wanted to forget them. Release came gradually for each secretary, marking their transition from Nazi elite to ordinary citizens seeking anonymity. WW2 was released by December 1945, but restricted to the Soviet sector, then moved to Bavaria in February 1946 after British hospitalization and American interrogation. Christa Schroeder was released on May 12, 1948, after 3 years in Allied custody. These women faced the challenge of rebuilding their lives in a Germany that was rapidly distancing itself from its Nazi past. Finding employment proved difficult for women with such notorious backgrounds. Junge worked for Quick magazine's editorial staff and as a science reporter, using her skills in a completely different context. Schroeder found work as a secretary for a construction company in Munich, applying her administrative experience to civilian life. Gerda Christian divorced her husband Eckhard Christian in 1946 and moved to Dusseldorf, where she worked at the Hotel Eden. She maintained a friendship with Werner Naumann, a former state secretary in the Third Reich's propaganda ministry, who was later arrested by the British Army in 1953 and accused of leading a neo-Nazi group. Johanna Wolff chose a different path entirely. After her release on January 14, 1948, she moved to Kaufbeuren and steadfastly refused to participate in interviews or write memoirs. She remained a silent guardian of Hitler's legacy, intentionally keeping her perspective hidden from history. Reveal any information about Hitler. Even when offered substantial sums of money to write her memoirs in the 1970s, Wolff maintained that she was a private secretary and considered it her duty to protect Hitler's secrets. She died in Munich on June 5, 1985, at the age of 85, taking her knowledge to the grave. Some secretaries eventually broke their silence about their wartime experiences. Young's accounts first appeared in 1989's Voices from the Bunker, and then in 2002's Until the Final Hour, co-written with Melissa Mueller, sparking media interest and leading to her interviews in Blind Spot, Hitler's secretary. Schroeder's book, Er war mein Chef, was published in 2002, with its English translation, He Was My Chief, The Memoirs of Adolf Hitler's Secretary, appearing in 2009. The moral complexity of their positions sparked debates about collective guilt and individual responsibility. Young later reflected on her past after walking past a plaque commemorating Sophie Scholl. I could see that she had been born the same year as I, and that she had been executed the same year I entered into Hitler's service, and at that moment I really realized that it was no excuse that I had been so young. I could perhaps have tried to find out about things. Their post-war lives reflected Germany's own struggle with confronting its past. Young died from cancer in Munich on February 10, 2002, at the age of 81, reportedly stating shortly before her death, "Now that I've let go of my story, I can let go of my life." These women's experiences raise fundamental questions about the nature of complicity and the responsibility of those who serve power. The story of Hitler's secretaries reminds us how ordinary people can become part of extraordinary evil, not through violence, but through silence. Their post-war lives raise questions we're still grappling with today. How much did they know, and how easily can power blind us to responsibility? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more WW2 content. See you in the next one.